and welcome. You're tuning in to Unbreakable Hope with me, your host, Jessica Rose. This podcast is all about seeking the light. In each episode, we chat with someone who has either overcome the darkness or who is actively spreading light within their own community. So let's jump into today's episode. I'm honored to introduce today's guest, Bruce Simpson. Bruce has gone through a very dark time in life and come out on the other side, and now he's helping other people. I want to warn you that today we are talking about suicide, and we're talking about Bruce's life and how he's overcome a very dark time and has come out living life, being grateful, and actually enjoying the small moments. Please stick with us as we talk through this time and share a way that you can connect to get help when you're in need. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to have you on as a guest.
Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I know that we have a lot in common even from our short little chat, but I'd love to turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself to our audience, and that way we can get talking about these amazing life experiences that you've had that can really be world-changing.
Surely. My name is Bruce Simpson. I am a trial lawyer, civil trial lawyer in Lexington, Kentucky. I have been practicing 42 years. I tried a lot of civil cases in state and federal court. Primarily, the first part of my career was in civil rights litigation, representing individuals against private employers and also the government in civil rights cases, discrimination. Then had kind of a change in focus, if you will, the last 20 years, where I've been involved in land use disputes, fighting over development, both representing developers as well as neighborhoods, objectors to development all over the state of Kentucky. And I found out I really liked it. It's a high profile case in terms of people being interested in it. And I confess my ego goes in that direction for, high profile cases. Just I want to be there. So I've enjoyed it. I love the practice of law. A lot of folks ask me, 42 years, don't you think it's time to retire? But I still love it. I love representing people. I love the challenging cases. I still do civil rights cases. So it's I don't see any need to retire as long as I'm functioning at a high level. Well, unfortunately, which I am. I want to continue. And but while we're here, it's not about that. While we're here is a secret that I harbored for most of my life with respect to mental illness. And for most of my life, starting when I was a little boy and going back, I never felt good enough, never worthy enough. And my worthiness was based almost exclusively on being validated by other people, initially by my parents, and then that was then projected and carried forward with respect to everybody, that my sense of self-worth was entirely dependent upon someone telling me I was good enough, that I was doing a good job. I never believed it myself. I have I got diagnosed much later in life, which I'll talk about in a minute, with something called imposter syndrome, that I never believed the compliments that I was given because I didn't feel like I was anything close to being deserving of those compliments. So, but I got along fine. I'm married. I got 2 daughters. And like most men, particularly growing up in the 60s, we were taught, which I think a lot of men are still taught, you don't ever share anything personal. You certainly don't complain. Nobody wants to hear it. They think people will view you as weak, ineffectual. So suck it up, stop whining, be a man. That machismo overlay to the male gender is still strongly in existence today, and it certainly was for me. So even though from the time I was 10 years old up until 2 years ago, I felt totally worthless individually, that I was faking people out. I really wasn't as good as they thought. They were just being nice, and just felt like I didn't deserve to be here. I was just going along to get along, and it was drudgery. And but I was making a living, successful in that sense, but all the time harboring this tremendous sense of insecurity about who I was, my identity, and worth and worthiness as a human being. Uh, Things started to pick up for me in that regard in my early 40s, when I had colleagues in the legal profession and others in the Lexington, Kentucky community who would read about my cases in the newspaper or see clips on television and compliment me, and say, "Hey, I saw that part of your hearing. You did a good job. Really good job." I said, my response was, "Really? Are you kidding?" They said, "No, you did a good job." Uh, Honestly, I didn't believe them, but I loved hearing it, and it made me feel worthy. For the first time in my life, really, I felt worthy. I was at least good enough in the eyes of somebody. Even though I didn't believe them, I liked hearing it. And I was finally at least good enough in somebody's eyes. But I needed to get a compliment ever so often to keep going, because a bad day for me, um, would lead me to pop an 8 to 10, 12, 14 Excedrin a day for stress headaches. Then I have a bleeding stomach and I have to go to the emergency room to deal with that kind of thing. So I had that level of self-medication, if you will. In my early 40s, I started feeling good, and they tell me stuff. Life was pretty much okay. But I had to have those compliments ever so often, and that went along fine. Until 2022, I had my first major health problem. I had a heart condition that came about that needed treatment. I got hospitalized for it. I got put on blood thinner. One of the consequences of blood thinner is that you're very susceptible to bleeding. You got to be very careful about falling. And I fell in May of 2022 and sustained a brain bleed. And I was in ICU for a couple of weeks, in the hospital 2 more times in 2022. One of the other consequences of the result from the blood thinner and a brain bleed was memory loss. And I didn't know that at the time. I only found out about 9 months later after I fell, 7 months later after I fell. And that was in January of 2023, when I opened the mail from the Kentucky Court of Appeals in a case that I had won at trial. It was had a lot of publicity. It was a big upset victory for my clients and me personally. It was a long shot win. We were ecstatic. My clients were super excited. We celebrated. It was, one of those really fun moments that you have as a trial lawyer, and felt really good about it. But when I opened the mail on this case, and I read it across the top of the opinion of the decision to be published, only about 10% of the appellate court decisions are published in the law books forever, for lawyers to read and to cite as court precedent in other cases that might come after that decision is published. So I thought, well, that was just as good. Published case. Things get better and better. And then, of course, it didn't take very long for me to scroll down the page I was reading, where it said in the center of the opinion, order reversing, meaning the trial court victory that I had obtained was set aside. And I quickly read through the opinion, and about halfway through the first page, the court observed that the respondent's counsel, which was me, had not filed a responsive brief in the case. And I'm like, what? This is totally a mistake. Of course, I filed a brief. I won this case. Now, why would I not file a brief? High profile case, big upset, all that publicity. And I checked and I had forgot to file it. Um, I just, it was due about the same time as my brain bleed, and I just forgot it. I just didn't file it. I used to have a memory that I didn't even need a calendar. It just came to me naturally. You're going to have an appointment in 6 months at 10:30. I would remember it. Anyway, when I read that I had not filed a brief in that case, it crushed me like nothing ever in my life. Nothing. And I thought to myself, I can't live with this. There was nothing I could do to fix the case. It was over. It was final. There wasn't any potential to save it in any way, shape, or form. And truth of the matter is, I had vowed, after hearing I was finally worthy enough in my early 40s, that I was a good lawyer. And I would read about lawyers that got into trouble for one reason or another. They were selling drugs, they were going to prison for something, getting disbarred. They were on the front page of the paper, in the news. Total humiliation. I thought, I would think to myself, man, if I was that guy, and that happened to me, I'd kill myself. Now that I'm finally feeling worthy as a lawyer, as a human being, only because other people told me that I was a good lawyer. I didn't believe I was. But when you don't have any sense of self-worth at all, at least hearing that would keep me going. And now I'd lost all that at that moment that I read that I'd not filed a brief in that case. Major malpractice. Major malpractice. First time I'd ever in my life heard a client in 40 years, ever. And this was a major one. This was a big one. And it was going to be a court precedent for every lawyer in the state of Kentucky from now until the end of time to read, in the event this issue ever was needed to be talked about in a case. And I instantly knew that my 30-year contingency plan to kill myself if I ever perceived a legitimate threat, a serious threat to my reputation that other people told me I had as a lawyer, was threatened. I was entirely comfortable with self-inflicted death for 30 years. It was just business for me. That sounds bizarre. I know. But that was me. It was my exit strategy. I was always ready. I had an active plan, to end my life. And so I went about that day. I was up all night. I couldn't sleep. The next morning, my wife left early for work. And when she when she when she leaned down to kiss me goodbye, I'm sorry, I knew that would be the last time I kissed her. I love my wife, love my two children. But I thought at that moment I had not only hurt a client, but I had also hurt them, because my worthiness as a human being, in my mind, could only be assessed by how others thought about me as a good lawyer, nothing else. And because I did have that reputation, my family was proud of me. Um, and the thought that I would have to hang my head in shame from that moment on because of this non-fixable malpractice, major malpractice, I thought, you know, they didn't deserve the taint of a malpractice lawyer. My whole identity was based upon performance and being recognized for it. I had no other value in my assessment of my self-worth, no other value to be on this planet except for achieving acceptance in the eyes of other people as performing well in their judgment, in particular as a good lawyer. That if I couldn't meet that expectation, life was over for me. That that was my only reason for existence, was satisfying other people's opinion of me as a good lawyer, because I had no other notion of self-worth beyond getting their approval. And so after she left, I went to a gun store. I hadn't fired a gun since I was in the Army, pistol. Went to a gun shop. I bought the most powerful handgun they had. It was a 357 Magnum with hollow point bullets, explode on impact. I did not want to survive. I had read about people that tried to kill themselves by gun and were not successful, wound up in a nursing home. I didn't want people to come visit me out of sense of obligation because I tried to kill myself. Like anything that I set my mind to, where I can control the outcome, it will happen, and I would be successful. I could never control a jury or a judge. I could only influence them by my preparation. But I've always been prepared. I get very focused in preparation. When I've ever walked in any courtroom for any hearing or any trial, I've been 100+% prepared. I'm not going to lose a case because of lack of preparation. And so I knew what I had to do. I had this plan for 30 years, and I wanted to be successful in killing myself, so I bought a powerful handgun and bullets explode on impact. And I wasn't crying. I mean, I wasn't tearful because I had reached a comfort level about death, self-inflicted death, for over 30 years. So I wrote a note, came home, wrote a note to my family, put all my estate documents on the kitchen counter. Then I took an Uber. I wanted to go to a public place. I didn't want to kill myself in my house and ruin the value of the house. My wife wanted to sell it or whatever, and I didn't want her to find me, like that. So I took an Uber about 15 miles south to Nicholasville, Kentucky, where I'm from, where my grandparents were buried and my sister's buried. Took an Uber down there, had the loaded 357 revolver where you could see the bullets on the outside of the barrel in my pocket. And thinking back on it, I knew I didn't want to telegraph anything to anybody. I was just talking with the Uber driver, very, polite conversation. Again, when you get comfort level about self-inflicted death, I suppose that's not surprising. I think about it now and I'm like, man, I was in really bad shape. But got out of the Uber. Was January 25th of 2023 in Nicholasville, Kentucky at Maple Grove Cemetery. About 20 degrees, 6:30, 6:45 at night. About 5 minutes after I got there, my phone started blowing up with calls. I saw my wife was calling. I didn't answer. My brothers were calling me. She'd obviously called them. My daughters were calling me. I just turned my phone off. At that moment, there was nothing anyone could say or do to talk me out of this. It had to happen. I couldn't. I'd hurt a client, and scarred my family forever because of my malpractice. They would no longer be proud of me. And there was no doubt in my mind that at that time, it was better off. I was better off for everybody's sake if I was dead. There wasn't any doubt about that. I was 100% certain. So I turned my phone off. There was nothing they could do or say. And I turned my phone off, pulled the gun out, kind of paused for a little bit. You know, it's one thing to have a plan for 30 years to kill yourself. And then you're alone in a cemetery, nobody else in the cemetery at that hour, and certainly not 20-degree weather. And I thought, well, Simpson, is this how you want to be remembered? Is this how you want to die? And I did say a prayer. I will confess to you that prior to that day, I was the quintessential doubting Thomas about even the existence of God. I I had been browbeat by federal judges and state judges for 40 years in court, uh, having them peer down at me, looking over their reading glasses. One particular judge, I think I'm still suffering PTSD because it was like my first federal trial, peering down at me, telling me, Mr. Simpson, I don't care what a nice lady your client is. I don't care that she teaches Sunday school, that her grandchildren love her. Sir, I want you to produce now the cold hard facts admissible pursuant to the federal rules of evidence in my courtroom that the governing law in this case provides her a remedy. I want cold hard facts. And I had that drilled into me so many times that if I couldn't prove something pursuant to the rules of evidence, either in state or federal court, it didn't exist. And I incorporated that attitude about cold hard facts with respect to life in general for me, everything. And I could never prove, I could never authenticate the Bible pursuant to the rules of evidence in a courtroom because of it wasn't recorded contemporaneously with when it was spoken. The authors were uncertain. Hearsay issues, translation issues, a whole lot of things that would never allow the Bible to be admitted into evidence for the truth of the matter asserted. And so I can't buy into something I can't prove in court. And then I would look at televangelists and I would get so sick at my stomach seeing those folks hawking their faith for a fee to have people give them money so they could live in multi-million-dollar houses and fly around in jets. And I had a whole lot of basis in my own mind for all my life to that moment, not believe in God. That was just kind of hope he did, but I just didn't think so. But I did when you're at the point of no return, which I was, I figured I had nothing to lose. So I did say a prayer. And I prayed, God, can you make this just be a nightmare I wake up from? Can you just make it go away? I didn't expect that prayer to be answered. But I figured I had nothing to lose. And 5 or 10 minutes later, nothing happened. So I decided to test fire the weapon. It was a brand new gun, should have fired, but again, I hadn't fired a pistol, since I fired a 45 in the Army. And pull the hammer back. I saw that the round rotate into the firing chamber, pointed it to the ground, pulled the trigger. It went loud, a lot louder than the 45. Kicked my hand way back over my shoulder. I wasn't expecting that. It was so loud, dogs started barking all around the cemetery. And I thought somebody would be coming out wanting to know what the heck was going on. And I didn't want them to see what I was about to do. And I didn't want to be stopped. So per my plan, I called 911 and reported a body in Maple Grove Cemetery. I told the dispatcher and she asked me where the body was and I told her. And she said, will you be there to assist the officer? And I said, yes. And she said, the officer is en route. So I knew my time was coming. I removed the spent casing from the revolver. I didn't have to. It had already passed the firing chamber, but I wasn't going to make any mistakes. None. I always have double and sometimes triple redundancies on preparation, typically for trials when you never know what might come at you during the course of a trial, to be as ready as I could be. And I incorporated that preparation level and commitment to preparation to a successful outcome in everything that I did in my life where I had control of the outcome, which I certainly had control of the outcome to kill myself. So I put the spent casing in my pocket. I pulled the hammer back. I saw the next bullet rotate into the firing chamber, just like it happened before in the test firing. And I put the gun to the side of my head and I pulled the trigger. And the hammer hit the bullet and the bullet didn't fire. And I was dumbfounded. Like, what? What? I was not prepared. I was supposed to be dead. I wanted to be dead, and I was alive. And then I saw the police officer coming toward me about 75 yards away from the entrance to the cemetery up the driveway. I thought about pulling the trigger again, but I froze because I just didn't want anybody to watch that. I put the gun in my pocket. I had no contingencies to say anything at all. I was supposed to be dead. I usually have contingencies for every foreseeable consequence or event that might come at me in my private life as well as in a courtroom. But I had none for still being alive after pulling that trigger. So he pulled up. I kind of walked over to his car. He rolled the window down. I kind of stammered. I apologized. I said, "I'm sorry. It was a bag. It wasn't a body. I'm sorry it came out." And he, thank you for calling in anyway. And he drove away, but he didn't leave the cemetery. I wanted to finish what I came to do. I was still locked on killing myself, but I didn't want to kill myself with a witness. Um, you know, so he parked not too far away. It was cold. I said it was, I said it was 20 degrees. So I looked across the street, tried to get warm, saw a gas station. I went over to the gas station. I was crossing the street to get to the gas station. A thought occurred to me to call a friend of mine, a former friend at the time, Bruce Smith, who was also an attorney, and in Nicholasville, 15 miles south of Lexington, where I live. I hadn't talked to him in 5 years, though, because we had a case against one another and it got really heated. And unfortunately, it ended our friendship. I had not talked to him in 5 years. But the thought occurred to me to call Bruce Smith. So I called him. I I was kind of surprised he even answered, but he did. And I said, "Hey, can you talk?" And I didn't tell him I had a gun, or I didn't tell him I was down there to kill myself. Um, I mean, I didn't have any, honestly, at that moment, I don't even know what I was doing, but that was the first thought that came to my mind, to call him. And I did. He came and got me. We went to a bar for a couple of hours. We talked. The whole time I'm sitting there in that bar with 357 loaded minus one bullet in my pocket. And I'd be thinking to myself while we were talking, am I still going to finish this mission? And yeah, I was going to finish it. I did heal our friendship with Bruce, and it got to be about 11 o'clock at night. And I said, "Just take me back to the gas station and I'll take an Uber back to Lexington," which he agreed. And we pulled up to the gas station for the Uber. I said, he said, "I'll wait." I said, "No, man, go on home. It's 11 o'clock. I'm fine. It'll be here shortly. I'm good." And tried to get out of his car two more times in the next 15 minutes. And each time he would say, I would wait. I realized I was not going to be able to kill myself in Maple Grove Cemetery because I was going back there. There wasn't any Uber coming. I'd never called an Uber, and I was going back to the cemetery. But he said, I'm waiting. So I said, can you just take me home? And I mean, I wasn't going to go. He was going to drop me off at my house, but I wasn't going in my house. So he agreed to. I texted the Uber, who I knew, said, there wasn't an Uber. I acted like I was texting. Anyway, he takes me back to Lexington, about a half hour. Come over the hill in my subdivision. There's like 5 or 6 police cars in front of my house, lights flashing. And Bruce looked at me, he goes, what the hell is going on? Again, I had no lies, nothing. I was stunned to see the police. My wife had called the police. They'd been there since she'd found the note. They initially thought, I later learned, that she might have murdered me. And if you Google suicide, you'll find that most of the publicized suicide cases are murder homicide. But I came up, I didn't know what to say to Bruce. I'm like, well, I guess Cindy's upset about something. Upset? He said, what did you do? I said, you know me, I would never hit her. I said, just don't stop. He said, well, I'm not stopping. I've been drinking. So we kind of slowly rolled past my house. There were like 2 or 3 officers in my front yard. Everybody else was inside my house. And I said, just drive up to Harrodsburg Road. It was about a mile and a half away from my house in Lexington. And I walked back. So he drove up and I got ready to get out of the car and he grabbed my arm. He said, now you're walking back, right? I said, yeah, I'm walking back. But I wasn't walking back. There wasn't going to be no walking back. But I told him I was. So he left. There was this big detention basin not too far from where he dropped me off at a gas station, behind the gas station. Dark, and I walked down, hidden away from everybody, and pull the gun out for the final time. Now, this part of what I'm going to say, I didn't share publicly until a year of at my anniversary of my attempt. I didn't share it because 6 months after my suicide attempt, I started with mental health treatment, getting so much better. And I wanted to be available for other lawyers. That was my group. It's since broadened to everybody, but at the time it was lawyers. And I wanted, if people found out about it, my suicide attempt, I wanted to be credible. And I thought that if I told about all these incredible events that took place, plus what I'm getting ready to share, that they wouldn't believe me and they would think I'm truly so whacked out. It wouldn't be worth their time to even have a conversation with me. So I didn't disclose it. Also, because of my skepticism about the existence of God, just the existence of God. And anyway, so I didn't talk about what I'm about to say for a year, but for those reasons. But when I pulled the gun out for the final time in that detention basin, and thought occurred to me, Bruce, you spent a half hour with him, you healed your friendship. You tell him you're going to walk home and now you're going to kill it yourself. How's that going to make him feel? And I thought, damn. But then I kind of regained my focus and I'm like, well, I know, but he'll get over it. It's not going to be that bad. I don't have any option. This has to happen. And wasn't crying. I mean, it was business, just business for me. And then I kind of walked close to the top of the basin. I was just meandering around. Uh, and I had this all encompassing sense of calm and peace that just overwhelmed me, just envelops me like nothing I'd ever experienced before. All that anxiety and that compulsion to kill myself for the previous 36 hours just extinguished, vacated my body. And at the same time, inside of my head, I received a very comforting message that said, Bruce, you're not going to kill yourself. You're going to be okay. And you're going to be equipped to handle the aftermath of your suicide attempt. You're going to be fine. And that, coupled with all the other things, the gun not firing after the hammer hit the bullet, brand new gun, 30-year plan. I couldn't process all of that. I'm just like numb, totally numb. But I was totally calm, totally at peace for the first time in my life that way. And I went to the back of the shopping center and unloaded the rest of the bullets, threw them away. I started walking home. I was just really totally bewildered about what had taken place, what had happened, what I'd heard. Um, I did peek around the corner to see if the police were still there. They had left. I learned later I had police looking for me in two different counties in the state of Kentucky. Um, I called my wife. Um, she was devastated, totally devastated. But I figured I needed to call her before going up and knocking on the door. And she called the police. They were there. Two police cars and a paramedic unit were there in 5 minutes. Came inside my house. I told them, guys, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I didn't tell them I pulled the trigger. I didn't tell them I tried to get out of my friend's car 3 times. I didn't tell them what happened in that detention basin. But the lead officer, woman police officer, said, well, we got on your computer. We saw the gun shop you went to. We saw the gun you bought, got confirmed. We saw the bullets you bought. We saw where you got an Uber. And I mean, they pinged my phone while I was still in the cemetery. When I turned my phone off, they couldn't find me. They said, if you go that far, statistically, you're likely to try this again. So you need to stand up, put your hands against the wall, and we have to pat you down for weapons. Now I had left the gun outside. It was unloaded. My son went and got the gun and gave it to the police. Of all the things that I never imagined happening to me, situations that I might find myself in that might need to be prepared to deal with, which as a lawyer, you're always on a lookout of foreseeable things that might impact your case. And I incorporated that into my lifestyle, things that I might have to deal with. How would I deal with them so I wouldn't be in a panic state? I never imagined ever any scenario that I would be in my house being pushed up against my living room wall in front of my family, patted down for weapons, and then being handcuffed and taken outside in front of my family and all the neighbors and lodged in the back of a police car and taken to a state mental institution. Eastern State Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky is the oldest continuously operating state psychiatric facility in the United States. 250 years it's been open. But that's what happened. I get to the Middle Eastern state about midnight. They put me in an unlocked room, checked on me every 15 minutes. They had to unlock the bathroom for me to use it. They had to be in the shower when I took a shower. I met my first mental health professional at the age of 73. Uh, I didn't believe in mental health professionals. I just didn't believe that they could talk me out of feeling as the way I felt. Uh, I just didn't believe that was possible. Um, he spent a lot of time with me in the 4 days I was there. Talked about a lot of things I never talked with anybody about, and started me on some medication, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medication. Then I got released from the hospital. I went to meet with my clients that had malpracticed. I told them the statute of limitations. They had to file suit against me for my malpractice, and then reported my conduct to the Kentucky Bar Association that regulates lawyer conduct. And then I got fired from my law firm. So I was 73, unemployed, with a whole lot of debt, just gotten out of a mental institution after trying to kill myself. But I will say this, I was never, have not been since then, afraid or concerned about my uncertain future because of what happened to me that night. Um, Suffice it to say, I'm no longer a doubting Thomas about the existence of God. I know God is real. And with mental health therapy over the next, it's now been a little over 2.5 years, a little more than that. Uh, since my suicide attempt, I'm functioning at a higher level than ever. I'm still practicing law, functioning higher level as a human being and as a lawyer than ever. And I am blessed. I know I should be dead. By every logical, certainly purposeful and planned effort on my part, ought to be dead based on my history of being successful and controlling outcomes of things that over which I had total control. My physical decisions and actions related thereto. Uh, I know I should be dead, but I'm not. I know mental health treatment works. It does work. Uh, and faith in God and seeking to do His will every day and not mine is the path I know I need to follow. I'm thinking more clearly. I'm no longer worried about being validated by anybody. I don't need recognition. I don't crave it. Don't get me wrong. I like being complimented as well as anybody, but it's not a necessity for me. It's not something I have to have at all. Um, uh, Being humble, and I'm still conscientious about my clients. I'm still work hard. Nothing's changed about that. Uh, but I don't worry about what other people's opinions are of me. I don't even care what my opinions are of me. None of those matter. The only opinion that I care about is being in God's favor of following what He wants me to do and studying the Bible and commentary and getting educated. And that process, that study process, has changed my process of thinking of how I look at things. And it hasn't changed me politically. Uh, I'm still a Democrat, and but my whole attitude and reason for being here is all a gift from God. I'm just telling you, those are the facts. I'm grateful. So I published about my story in the American Bar Association Journal and the Kentucky Bar Association. I've spoken about it numerous times at conferences around the state of Kentucky. I speak about it quite a bit, write about it quite a bit, I should say, on LinkedIn and Facebook. Uh, I advertise I'm available to speak publicly and to speak privately with individuals who, like me, suffered in silence with suicidal ideation or just depression, whatever. I encourage them in what I share my post. Call 988 if you're in a crisis. Those people are trained to help people. Um, I became a certified adult peer support specialist this year so that I would be competent to talk with folks um, in crisis, uh, which has helped me greatly. But I tell people to call 988 if you're really in a crisis. But I also tell them that if you just want to talk to another human being who is a good listener, I do a lot of listening, but who's been to the most awful, forbidding place no human being should venture. I've been there. Call me. I'll listen. I offer plain conversation, honest, 100% authentic. Uh, when you are at a suicidal point, which I know what that's like, you better be 100% honest in everything you say. You better be 100% authentic. There's no bullshit when you talk, when people are at that point, if you ever hope to save them from carrying out their plan. I know that. And so I call 988 3 times a month, check on them at random. I tell them, if you get a legitimate call, dump me and take the call. But I tell them, I said, I'm really doing a quality check on you guys because I refer a lot of people to you. And I want to make sure you guys are up for the task. And they have been. I've been impressed. But I give out my number. I put my email out in the public domain, Bruce at bsimpsonlaw.com. My telephone number, cell number is 859-229-3436. If you want to talk, just talk. No judgment. No judgment. I've been there. I don't want anybody that I can influence to go where I went. There's no need. You can be helped. As much as I never believed it possible, I can't believe anybody was more negative about being able to be helped than me. But I have lived to witness how wrong I was, only by the grace of God. So for whoever I can influence in my little sphere of influence, I don't have any delusions of grandeur. I'm certainly not into promoting myself at all. I'm just one human being, just one. And I really, each day, when I communicate with people on a general level or at a conference, when I'm speaking to groups, my goal is just to reach one person, just one. I don't care if I'm speaking to 1,000, I want to connect with one person because I know 5% of the audience statistically has considered suicide at some point in a year, seriously. Close to 20% of the people will have some kind of significant depressive episode. One person dies by suicide once every 11 minutes in the United States. A person tries to kill themselves in the United States every 23 seconds. It is a major public health problem hiding in plain sight because we fear to talk about it. The stigma is a killer. The stigma about mental health treatment and mental health illness keeps people from reaching out for help. It certainly did me. I knew I was messed up inside, but I dare not go talk to somebody. I was honestly afraid to get within 100 yards of a mental health therapist, mental health professional's office for fear someone would recognize me. Certainly, I would have had to wear a disguise. Go inside a mental health treatment person's office, lest I see somebody that recognized me. I mean, I couldn't have done it because of the stigma, which there's no need for that. And mental illness is as legitimate as cancer, heart disease, and broken bones, and as I almost found out, can be equally as deadly. The stigma has got to be stopped, and we control it. Us, each of us. We can think differently about mental health treatment, think differently about people with mental illness, and have the same degree of empathy and appreciation of them as human beings as if they were suffering from cancer, heart disease, or some other serious malady that we all recognize and accept as being quote unquote legitimate. We've got to stop this stupid stigma. It's killing people at alarming rates. So I'm just one person. I have limitations, obviously, on how many I can reach. I do what I can, and I'm grateful to be alive. So, for those of you that might watch this podcast, call 988 if you're ever in a serious mental health crisis. Talk to a friend that you trust and whose judgment you trust, and share with them what's going on. But if you don't have anybody, or you just want to talk to somebody who's been there, no one could have tried harder than me to kill themselves. Nobody. Call me, 859-229-3436. My email is bruce@bsimpsonlaw.com. I don't charge. No charge. I can't promise you I will do anything to fix you. I'm not a therapist. I don't hold myself out as one. I am merely one human being who's still alive, who should be dead, who went to a place very few come back from. I want to share with you, you can be helped. As negative as I was about it, I was wrong. You can be helped. So thank you for listening to me. You got my number and email. If I can help you, contact me. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a beautiful story in so many different aspects, as really making it through the darkness. And like you said, you carried that with you for all those years, and you had a plan, and just having this kind of divine intervention. I know you mentioned that feeling, and for those who haven't had an experience like that in their life, I personally know what that feels like, to literally feel that sense of calming and like literally arms wrapped around me to protect me in a couple of situations that have happened in my life. And it's very surreal. And it's, just going through life, it's challenging, right? Life is hard. And I love that you're so outspoken about this now, and that you're able to help so many people. And like you said, it's the one, getting to the one. And that's my goal too. If we can share more about the darkness, it doesn't feel so dark, right? With a lot of these topics where people feel overwhelmed, and like you were saying, that imposter syndrome, feeling like nothing you ever did was going to be good enough, is a lot of people feel that way, but we don't talk about that a lot. And I'd say maybe over the past 5-10 years, people have talked about it more and more and more, but I don't know. Some people, my husband would beg to differ with me, like they'll pull your bootstraps up. I'm like, but really, does that work? Does that work long term? It doesn't. It sticks with you. So if we can break away the taboo about all different topics and just be able to talk as human beings and share our human experience with people, I think that's so important. And I think your story, just alone, people being able to hear it, is going to be able to resonate with people and save so many lives. And I love that you're making yourself available and encouraging people to call 988. That's one thing that I do too, is even if you're not in a crisis, it's great to call, to know what it feels like. Because you always hear like, oh, they put you on this weight and blah, blah. You know what? Call when you're not in crisis. Ask them, what does a phone call typically look like? What are some resources you could provide in my area? Because it also equips you to be better available to help somebody in your life or help yourself if that time comes. I appreciate you so much and your willingness to take time out to share your story, not just with me, but everyone that you share your story with, and the work that you're doing outside of being a lawyer, I think is absolutely amazing and courageous. And I'm so grateful again that you were willing to share your story and share so many details that I think are really going to help people.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity. Whatever courage I have is God given. Honestly, I can't claim credit for that. I'm filled with gratitude more than anything to still be here, living and functioning better than ever. I do get emotional from time to time, for just little things that I used to never appreciate. Moments of, being outside and seeing something really beautiful about nature and be with my wife or children and really having a really joyous moment. And I will pause and realize at that moment, I would have missed this. I would have never experienced that joy, especially the joy I have, and thanks to God, and how I view life and how it ought to be lived, and to have a purpose bigger than myself. Uh, I would have never experienced that had I been successful in trying to kill myself. And I've also witnessed the devastation that just my suicide attempt has had on my family. Awful. And the family had been in therapy. They didn't understand. And I've talked with many survivors of loved ones who've killed themselves and in the last 2.5 years. And their pain, their grief is much more severe and long lasting than the grief endured by loved ones who died by natural causes. The why questions: why did they do it? What was he or she thinking? Why did they do this to me? What could I have done to stop it? Why didn't I do more? And I tell the people that are contemplating suicide that I speak with, because I speak very plainly, when they say I'm better off dead, I said, well, let me tell you, no judgment here, okay? We're just speaking. I thought I was better off dead too, but I've lived to witness just the hell I created for other people with just my attempt. I've talked with survivors whose loved ones died by suicide. You're not going to be doing them any good at all. You're going to hurt them way beyond what you're contemplating. Just to be real with you, the devastation on survivors from loss by suicide is unimaginable or horrible. You do not want to put anyone through that. It lasts for decades. So it's a major public health problem that we need to talk about more, and programs like what you have, what you're doing, help to do that. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share and to be available to others, because I'm grateful to still be here.
Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate you and all the work you're doing and all the perspective you bring. So I'll definitely have your contact information in the description below and ways to follow you on LinkedIn, because you said you share more of your story there too, to get people engaged in talking about it more.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you found this episode inspiring, please share it with someone you never know who needs more light in their life. May this serve as a reminder that there's always darkness in the world. Do not let it consume you. Always seek the light. Please take a moment to do the good old subscribe, rate, and review. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me spread more light and love. Until next time, be kind, be loving, be human, and don't ever let anyone steal your hope.